prime thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. Today we are going to get into the Atlanta Falcons game. The Raiders are playing on Monday Night Football. They're playing in prime time. So you get to see the elegant tank in prime time this week against a Falcons team that's real, and they lost 4 in a row. Kirk Cousins has played like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league in the last couple of weeks. So the Raiders might actually have a chance to win this game, and maybe that's good news or bad news depending on how you're looking at it. Well, that's Vic Tafer, that's Sean Reed, I'm Ted Wynn. Are you guys both going to be at the game this week?
Yeah, it's a big one. The nation's watching. Desmond Ridder probably going against his old team. It's a great storyline.
Nice little revenge storyline there. Desmond Ridder against a team that gave up on him after he fumbled every single game he played in.
This is hot shots, man. What do you do to you?
All right, well, that's the first thing we got to talk about, right? Like, is Aiden O'Connell playing this week?
Well, apparently he's trying. I mean, I know today he wasn't at practice, but Antonio Pierce said he's still trying to get there. I think they have an extra day to prepare, and kind of a surprising twist because we saw him, he's been carted off at the air cast, and we thought he was done for the year. But kind of a page from the Derek Carr playbook. He kind of a miraculous return. He's ready to go. He wants to play. I think he realizes it's probably his last shot at being a starting quarterback, so he might as well give it all he can. So I don't know if he'll make it back this Monday, but I think he'll definitely play again this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely looked a lot worse than it ended up being. Having a bone bruise in his left knee, and he said, I guess, felt pretty bad on the field, and it didn't respond to sort of the initial test that the medical staff puts the knee through, and so he was thinking it was something pretty serious, and that's what led to the air cast, but avoided a super serious injury. He did participate in the walkthrough that the team had on Wednesday, but he didn't practice the last 2 days. Obviously, a walkthrough is, it's not as serious, and so he's not quite ready for practice yet. But we'll see. Really determining is if he's going to be able to get back out there tomorrow, Saturday, and practice. If he can't practice on Saturday, then he's in all likelihood not going to play on Monday. And so, offensive coordinator Scott Turner, we asked him, and he, pretty much preparing for either one, Desmond Ridder or Aiden O'Connell. It's not like they're going to just completely overhaul the offense, but they are different quarterbacks and have different skill sets and strengths. And so, it's not ideal, but he's sort of just preparing to be able to run with either one that they have. And, if O'Connell can't play, they called up Carter Bradley from the practice squad just to have an emergency quarterback. Obviously, can't go into a game with just one guy available if he is out. And so they're doing their due diligence, but we'll have more clarity on Saturday when it comes to whether O'Connell's going to be able to play.
Yeah, and there also might be some gamesmanship. I mean, this way you make the Falcons prepare for two quarterbacks. Obviously, there'll be different looks with Rizzo, some more run option type plays, maybe some more. You'll be worried more about his running ability. So I think you are giving the Falcons more to have to deal with in terms of their preparation.
Before we get too far into the game, Tashan, you were at the owners meeting. You got to spend some time with Mark Davis. How was that? You learn anything new?
He hit on a few different topics. Most notably, we asked him about, essentially how he's feeling about the job status of Antonio Pierce, and he pretty much declined to get into it. He said that's something that he's going to evaluate once the offseason arrives after these final 4 games are over, and kind of asked him a follow-up, just trying to get him to, give some sort of commitment to bringing back Pierce as head coach next year, and he wouldn't go there. And so I think that's something that, we've talked about it. There's been a ton of speculation about Pierce's job security, but I do think it is pretty telling that Davis wouldn't commit to bringing him back next year. It's a pretty different tone than he had from the last time I talked to him at the owners' meetings in October. He was saying that he was a young coach, and he thought they'd be fine and he'd grow into it. And, things have changed a lot on the field since then. They've lost 9 games in a row and been eliminated from the playoffs. Things have really fallen off the rails. And so he's clearly considering at least making a change. Otherwise, he would have just come out and said that, Pierce will be back next year. And so that was what stood out the most. He also talked about a little bit more about Tom Brady and what role he could have in the offseason. He stopped short of saying that he would have a formal day-to-day role, but when it comes to major decisions, such as, what to do with Pierce, or, if they're going to draft a quarterback, or other major decisions that the franchise is going to have to make this offseason, it's pretty clear that Tom Brady's going to have a pretty significant voice in those matters. And then when it comes to GM Tom Telesco, I mean, he was pretty supportive of him. He made it clear that Telesco and Pierce are being evaluated independently of one another, but he seemed to be more comfortable speaking about the future when it came to Telesco. He gave him a lot of props for this draft class, and the production that they've gotten out of the rookies. And when I asked him, you guys have the top pick right now, are you going to draft a quarterback? He's like, that's a question for Tom Telesco. So that would assume that Telesco is going to be the one making that choice when the offseason arrives. And so I thought it was interesting that he, was willing to go to sort of give Telesco that vote of confidence, but obviously wasn't willing to go there for Pierce.
Yeah, I think it's hard to give a guy a vote of confidence if you've lost 9 games in a row. I think obviously even if he wants to bring him back or he's leaning that way, I'm not sure he can really say that. But you got 4 games left, and I think Pierce has said the players are playing for jobs, coaches coaching for jobs, and if you're Mark Davis, that's something that you want to hear and you want to like see some results. You want to see some improvement. You want to see some wins. I mean, I think that's so. I think like you said, we'll wait and see what happens in the offseason. But I think right now for Mark Davis, you want to see a win before you really talk about next year or bringing guys back. Or I think there's definitely a culture has been set. Guys are playing hard. I think there's been some positives with Antonio, but clearly the results have not been there. I think it's a results business. Even if you are 2-11, you still got to win games.
Yeah, so not quite any big red flags, but the opening is definitely there for
Yeah.
a coaching change. All right. Other news: Charles Snowden got in a bit of trouble this week. What happened?
I mean, for what we know now, he was arrested on suspicion of DUI on Tuesday. Got the police report today. The incident actually happened late Monday night, like 11:30 p.m. Basically, um, his car was kind of like hanging off like a curb, kind of, but he was inside with it parked on neutral, and he took the keys out of the ignition, but the car was still running. Somebody called it in when they saw the car, and he really wasn't very responsive according to the report. Couldn't really walk, and they called medical assistance, and when they were loading him on the gurney, according to the report, they could smell alcohol, and so that's why they went ahead and arrested him on suspicion of DUI. And since then, he's been back with the team. I asked Coach Antonio Pierce about it today. They said that they addressed it internally, and now it's up to the league and um, obviously the legal process to play out. But he practiced Thursday and today, Friday. So he's back with the team, and looks like he's gonna, you know, assumedly play on Monday against the Falcons. But the legal process will play on, and the NFL, they are looking into it. And the way that they typically handle this is they wait to see what the court rules, which at this point probably won't happen by the end of this calendar year. That's probably a 2025 thing. But if he ultimately is found guilty, it's a suspension of 3 games, which would most likely go into effect next season. So that's kind of where things stand right now. But I know it's something that the Raiders have had happen often since they've been in Vegas. I mean, at this point, it has to be almost probably double-digit players that have been arrested on suspicion of DUI, and unfortunately, Snowden became another one.
Yeah, it's lucky that it wasn't worse. They didn't actually get in an accident or anything. I mean, clearly, I mean, the thing that's frustrating for a lot of people is that the NFL makes it a priority. Like these guys have literally like a speed dial and a button on their phone where you can call a car 24/7. They're gonna pick you up if you have any kind of doubts, if you're too drunk or you've been partying too much. They want to avoid this kind of thing. So really, it's so easy to push a button and they'll come and get you wherever and whenever. And there's no questions asked. So I just think we wish guys learn lessons from others that like Tashan mentioned, a lot of guys have had this problem in Vegas and throughout the league, but especially Vegas, especially there's been some really dire consequences to one of them. So I just think yeah, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's lucky that it wasn't worse than it was.
Be interesting to see what the numbers are as far as the Raiders and DUI incidents since they've arrived in Vegas, comparative with the rest of the league. I mean, because we pay attention to the Raiders, obviously, and it seems like it's happened a lot. But I wonder what it is relative to the rest of the league. I mean, obviously the Vegas night scene is much different than any other place. So that'd be interesting to see one day if you guys could ever or you ever want to write that story. Um,
Well, plus it'd be skewed because a lot of times if people use that service, it's not reported. So if you actually are,
mm,
so I just think that, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's and some different police departments work with player teams differently. So but it's a problem here. So I know, people talk about a zero tolerance policy. That hasn't been the case, but clearly it's a bad look for the Raiders.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like I said, he's lucky it wasn't worse, and that nobody got hurt or he didn't get hurt or anything of that nature. But it was his first offense for this type of thing, so hopefully he learns his lesson moving forward.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get into the tank update. What are we looking like? It looks like Raiders number one, Giants two, Patriots three, Panthers four, Jaguars fifth, and there are still 8 teams that have 3 or fewer wins. So really, this thing could still go in any direction as the season closes.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely far from settled that the Raiders are going to end up with, uh, the number one pick or even the top five pick. A lot of these teams could end up being worse than them if they just win one more game, and it comes down to strength of schedule and tiebreakers and things of that nature. And so, fans who are rooting for that outcome shouldn't be celebrating too early, especially because I'm sure we'll get into this in the game preview. A lot of these games could go either way that they have left on the schedule. So, be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Right now, they have the edge over the Giants for the top pick, but we'll see if that remains the case.
Yeah, if you are rooting for, a winless stretch, the schedule's not in your favor. Definitely some games that are winnable coming up. And this one I'm not so sure about, but next week, Jacksonville, definitely a winnable game. The Saints without Derek Carr, and they got Jake Hayner at quarterback and maybe Rattler later on, but that's they're not very good. So those two right there jump out as games that they could definitely win.
Yeah, so Jake Hayner and Mac Jones is the Raiders' biggest obstacle to the number one pick of the draft. I think I'm not saying he will be, but a guy that to pay attention to as far as quarterbacks, Drew Aller, Penn State quarterback, see how he performs in the playoffs because we talked about there's just not a real toolsy A+ tools type of quarterback in this draft, but he is one of those guys, and if he performs well in the playoffs, he could be one of those guys that ascend into that conversation. But again, we'll get more into that later on, and we'll probably talk to guys like Dane Brugler and that sort of deal when we are really getting into draft stuff. All right, let's get into the game preview. What are the Raiders' injuries looking like?
All right, the big one is Adam Butler. He's got a concussion. I guess today he was limited at practice. That's definitely a progression from where he was earlier in the week. Nate Hobbs is back, so that's a good sign. And then, of course, we talked about Aiden O'Connell, he's been out for so far, but he might try and come back. But those are the three, I think, right, Tashan? Anybody else?
Uh, yeah, I mean, like Hobbs has been limited, but it sounds like he's going to play. Max Crosby hasn't been practicing this week due to an ankle injury, but we've seen that a few times this season where he doesn't practice and then plays anyway, and I would expect him to do the same this week. And Jacoby Myers is nursing an ankle injury. That was also the case last week, and he played. Outside of that, cornerback Sam Webb has not been practicing with a back injury, and they're already pretty thin at corner, so that could be something that is notable, even though he's coming off the bench, but just for depth purposes. But that's pretty much it on the Raiders side of things. On the Falcons side, they're pretty much clean. Like the only guys that are on the injury report are backups for the most part, unless I'm missing somebody. But starter wise, they have pretty much everybody intact and ready to go. So the Raiders might have some issues, particularly at quarterback, but looks like the Falcons are going to mostly be healthy in this one.
All right, let's get into our game preview. What are we watching for when the Raiders have the ball?
I guess more of the Sincere McCormick show, right? I mean, this is kind of his chance to kind of take another step up, and he's looked every week, and I think he'll get more carries this week. Had 15, I think, last week, and they've started using a fullback, Mauga, to kind of help him. I guess he likes having a guy ahead of him. So the linebacker playing fullback in Mauga has done a good job, and so that's going to be the main look I think we'll see. And I think depending on who the quarterback is, well, if they can use some play action off of that, that'd be great. But if it's Ritter, then you might see some more run option type stuff. I'd hope, because that's kind of his strength. He definitely can get outside the pocket and run a little bit. At times, he said he runs too much, but it's all about learning curves. But I think for me, it's all about the running game and having Sincere kind of show he could be the guy next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to see them do a better job keeping Brock Bowers involved. I think that was something that they struggled with against the Bucks. I think he finished with 5 targets in that game and didn't get his first target until the second quarter. And obviously, teams recognize that he's their number one option, and so he's getting a lot more attention. But as we talked about, you still have to do a better job of making sure he's involved in the game plan. And I think they got away from that against the Bucks, and the Falcons, while their defense has underperformed this year based on expectation. They do still have a lot of talent in their secondary between AJ Terrell at cornerback and safeties, Bates and then Justin Simmons as well, two of the better safeties in the league. And so I'm sure they're going to throw multiple bodies at Brock Bowers and try to take him out of the game, just like the Bucks did. And really, whoever's at quarterback, they have to do a good job of keeping Bowers involved. And obviously, Scott Turner as a play caller, dialing up some creative ways to get him some touches as well.
Yeah, I think against the Bucks, they kind of outdunked themselves. Like Bucks were one of the worst teams against tight ends. They were like, oh, well, they're going to give extra attention to Brock Bowers, so maybe we'll just use Michael Mayer a lot. And I think they might have targeted Michael Mayer the most they have in the game this season, maybe, but I mean, he hasn't played a ton. The Falcons are actually pretty good against tight ends. They are 10th in receptions allowed, 10th best in receptions allowed to tight ends. Not because they have great linebackers that could cover. It's more so that teams just avoid throwing to the middle of the field because they're scared of Jesse Bates, who is really good at baiting quarterbacks and that sort of deal. So I think in this game, if you want to get Brock Bowers involved, I think you want to play him outside a little bit more. Isolate him on a backside on 3-by-1 concepts. We've seen him do that, and we've seen Brock Bowers actually have success against corners like McDuffie on those fade routes and things like that. Um, but I don't think this is a game where you want to run Bowers on a bunch of crossers and seams and have him run into Jesse Bates' area. But like you guys mentioned, you have to keep him involved. You have to find some creative ways to do that. You could throw him the ball underneath. The Falcons play a ton of zone. They're fourth in the league in zone coverage. So you can't throw the ball underneath on them, and they don't give up a ton of explosives, but they give up a lot of successful, efficient gains. So be patient, get Bowers the ball outside and underneath, let him run. The Falcons are a bad run defense. They're not a terrible run defense, 21st in defensive success rate. And the Raiders, ever since putting McCormick into the lineup in the last 2 games against 2 pretty good run defenses, against the Chiefs and the Falcons, um, it's a small sample, but in those 2 games, they have a 46.9% rushing success rate, which is 7th highest in that span. And that's a huge improvement from where the Raiders were in the beginning of the season, which was the worst rush success rate team in the league, and not even just the worst, like historically bad. So for them to jump up that high is something to note, and I think it's more than just McCormick. We talked about this line finally getting some continuity and playing some of those young guys together, so they're getting better. But McCormick definitely is making the most out of these runs. So I think whoever's playing quarterback, whether it's Desmond Ridder or Aiden O'Connell's going to be hampered if he does play. So I expect a lot of running. So I would think this is going to be another big McCormick game. All right, what are we watching for when the Falcons have the ball?
They got a lot of weapons. I think for a team that's struggling in offense, they have 2 good running backs. They got a tight end who's supposed to be a stud. Never quite got that level, but still, Pitts is very athletic and can make plays that most tight ends can't. I think they got Drake London, a good receiver, and Mooney's playing well. So it's surprising they're having a trouble scoring the past month or so. I think I'm sure looking for a breakout game for these guys. They're still in the playoff hunt. They need to win. So I think that I'm looking at all those weapons on offense and what the Raiders are going to do to slow those guys down.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see if Kirk Cousins can snap out of his drought or not. I mean, he's been pretty terrible the last 4 games. I think he has 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's been turning the ball over a ton. And while this Raiders defense hadn't been very adept at forcing turnovers, we've seen that start to change, particularly last week against the Bucks. But they forced 3 turnovers in the second quarter alone, and that helped them get back into that game. And given the way Cousins is playing, see if they're able to keep that hot streak rolling, and that could be something that ultimately decides this game, especially if the Raiders aren't getting a lot from their offense like they haven't all year, and if O'Connell isn't out there and they need some short fields and some plays that could potentially flip the game. I think that's where it could come down to is if the defense is able to force Kirk Cousins to keep turning the ball over because he's been it's probably the roughest stretch of his career, and we'll see if it continues.
Yeah,
So,
oh, go ahead, Vic.
I was gonna say, I also wonder if he's playing for his job. I mean, they're definitely. I know they don't want to do it, but at some point they got to look at Michael Penix as maybe an option if because they are in the playoff hunt. Their division's so bad they can turn around and make the playoffs. So I think I don't know if this is a last line for him or kind of the line in the sand kind of game for him, but clearly he needs to play better for his team to kind of get where they want to go this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good Falcons offense. They struggled in the last couple of weeks, but they've been moving the ball up and down the field. They've been running the ball extremely well. Their run game is pretty vanilla in the sense that they're just basically an outside zone team. They're going to run a ton of outside zone, some different variants of outside zone. But Bijan Robinson has been very good, very efficient, and hits those explosives when there's an opportunity to. And Kirk Cousins passed for 340 yards last week against a very good Vikings defense. But he's just been turning the ball over, 6 interceptions in the last 2 games. So, you know, this Raiders secondary is banged up. I mean, it's Nate Hobbs will help, but they're going to pick on Richardson, who has been one of the worst corners in the league. So Drake London's going to be a tough cover. Kyle Pitts is going to be a tough cover. Kyle Pitts is very inconsistent, and if you play any fantasy football, you know that. But Isaiah Palmau has been pretty terrible at covering tight ends, and since he's become a starter, so that's a matchup to look out for as well. But I think the Raiders actually have been a very good run defense in the past 5 weeks. They've jumped up to 8th in rushing defensive success rate. So they've actually been very good at stopping the run. But it's going to be tough stopping this Falcons running attack, which again has been pretty good. But the Raiders have to be able to get some turnovers. Both the Raiders and Falcons. Falcons are 21st in takeaway rate, and the Raiders are 22nd in takeaway rate. So the Raiders are going to have to pressure with the front four and maybe get some blitzes in, but they have to be able to get some turnovers in order to stop this Falcons offense, which, like Vic has mentioned, for a lot of talented players on this offense. All right, let's get into our matchups of the game. What are you guys watching out for?
Well, I'm looking back at the quarterback thing. If it is Ritter, I'm going to say it's Ritter versus himself. I think he mentioned this week he's sometimes he gets too over anxious. He likes to leave the pocket before he should, and he gets himself into trouble. It's been one of the hallmarks of his career. So I think he has to kind of, and it's going to be tough because I'm sure it'll be very emotional. You mentioned going against his old team, national TV is a chance for him to kind of show himself again that he can be a guy who thinks that he can play in this league when he was kind of written off here earlier in the last year or so. So I think it's keep the emotions in check, kind of play under control and don't try to make things happen when they're not really there. So I think it'll be a mind game for him. And really, I think he has to win that game for the Raiders to have any chance to stay in this game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be watching Jack Jones going up against Drake London when they are matched up. I'm sure he won't cover the entire game, but I think that's the Falcons' most consistent receiving target. I thought they did a pretty good job of corralling Mike Evans for most of the game last week against the Bucks, and Drake London has kind of a similar play style and build to him, and so I think that'd be a pretty crucial matchup. As Ted said, Kyle Pitts is very sporadic. Sometimes he's useful, sometimes he's not, and Bijan Robinson is a very talented player, but I don't know. I still feel like the Falcons haven't really figured out how to use him in the best way. It just seems like he's kind of here and there too. And so I think Drake London seems like the most consistent one. And so if Jack Jones can do a solid job of sticking with him, that could go a long way to this defense having a good day against Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, to me, I'm gonna watch DJ Glaze against Arnold Ibikete. How do you say his name, Sean?
Ask me.
Yeah, Deshaun. I say his name. I say his name. Yeah, I say his name, Deshaun. I say it.
No, because you're the
I
you
say it,
know
man.
all the pronunciations.
I don't know that
How do you
one
say
yet.
it, Vic? You know how to say it? Arnold.
Just say Arnold, man.
All right, he's the
Arnold.
best. He's the
Big,
he's the Falcons'
we call him
best
Big
passer.
Arnold. Big Arnold.
Yeah, Big Arnold. he's the Falcons' best pass rusher. I mean, the Falcons are one of the worst pass rushing teams in the league. That's why they're bad on defense, is because they have a good secondary, but they can't rush the passer. So the quarterbacks get a ton of time against them. DJ Glaze is, I think, someone has proved himself to be at least a good swing tackle. Still up in the air to whether he could be a starter or a guy that you want to develop into a starter. So I want to see him match up against Big Arnold here and see if he can buy some time for these quarterbacks. See him. I want to see him with some one-on-one reps. Like, don't give him a ton of help, and see if he could, uh, go on his own and evaluate him for next year.
What happened to Judon? He's got old.
I don't know. I mean, he's fell off. His play has been he fell off the map. It's been pretty bad. Colton Miller should
It
be able to
is.
handle him.
State of the Nation listeners should know he's Udon. His name.
Udon.
Udon. See, there you go. Pronunciation guy. You're back. All right.
Yeah, I haven't called him Udon. And now that I call him Udon, he's gonna get that boost. He's gonna go back to normal.
That's a secret.
All right. Let's look at X factors. Who are you guys X factors?
X Factor. We need like a sound guy. X Factor. I got none. Go ahead. I'll go
You
last.
have none.
I mean, I got a couple. I got to think about which one I want to say.
I'm gonna go with Nate Hobbs if he ends up playing. He hasn't played in a
Man,
while.
I was gonna say him. Fuck.
You should have said it then instead of
Yeah.
hesitating.
Yeah.
Asshole. But anyway, Nate Hobbs is mine. I think he's a pretty big difference maker for this defense. Versatile guy, but he's best when he's at that nickel spot. Makes an impact in the run game, which big deal this week, going up against a pair of pretty good backs and Bijan and the number 2 back behind him. And so see if he's able to, I don't know if they would use Pitts there or wherever the matchup is in the slot. See if he can hold his own in his first game back. Usually teams try to test a guy that's coming back off an injury, and so he may see a high volume of targets in this one. And so whether he plays well or not, I think there's going to be one of the X factors that determines how things go for the defense.
All
a
right.
good one.
Mine is going to be.
Don't take my other guy. Don't take him.
It's going to be Isaiah Palmau.
You just say he stunk 2 minutes ago.
I know. That's why he's going to be X factor, because
Okay.
if he plays good, then it's going to swing the game. Because this defense needs interceptions to stop this offense, and Palmau is going to be roaming the middle of the field. He's going to be matched up against Kyle Pitts, and if he could do a better job of covering tight ends, or he could bait Kirk Cousins into interception, that's gonna be pretty big. So I mean, I was going between Palmau and Divine Diablo in the middle of the field, but I'll go with Palmau because he's gonna match up a lot with Kyle Pitts, and he's a big play type of guy that if he's on and running routes hard and that sort of deal, could be an X factor. So I'll say Palmau.
I'm going with someone who Antonio Pierce called one of his favorite players on Monday, and that is Michael Mayer, who I think we're seeing more of the 12 personnel now. I think you mentioned Brock getting all the attention. They can look to Mayer, I think. So I think going way back to training camp, what we thought the offense looked like, maybe now it will start to be that, and Mayer can make some plays, take advantage of matchups. So I think Michael Mayer has a second straight game where he's an impact guy. I mean, he needs to be, I think, for this offense to score some points.
I like it. 12 personnel is back. All right. So let's get into our predictions. Who wants to go first?
Who's picking the Raiders?
This must be you. You jumped out there.
Damn. I don't. Am I gonna do it? I'll do it. I'll say no. I can't do it. I'm gonna say 31. 31. I was trying, man, but I don't know who the quarterback's gonna be. If it's Ridder, which I think it's gonna be, I just can't see Ridder beating the Falcons. So I'm gonna go 31-20 Falcons. I think the offense of the Falcons wakes up a little bit. I think it's a similar game that we've seen. The Raiders stay close for a while, and the other team pulls away at the end. So I'm gonna say 31-20 Falcons.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Falcons too. If the Raiders quarterback situation was a little bit more clear, maybe I would give them more of a chance. But I think this offense the Falcons offense hasn't been bad as the numbers have shown, and they still have explosive players, and they need to be able to get some takeaways, and they just aren't a good takeaway team. So I'm agree. I think the Falcons offense will wake up a little bit. I'll say 28-21.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Falcons 27-17 for the Raiders. I think this offense really regardless of who's at quarterback, is just struggling all season long, and there's no reason to expect it to change these final 4 games of the season. So, you
But
know,
they got Mauga now, the linebackers on offense, so that's a big boost.
yeah, sure, they'll probably boost them to 17 points, and they'll lose. So tank
Oh man.
continues.
Best chance for his offense is if Sincere McCormick has a big day and maybe rushes for 100 yards. This will be the worst run defense he's seen since he's become a big part of this offense. So we'll see. I mean,
What are the odds of a play action play where you throw Mauga the ball and he scores a touchdown? I need some odds in like 50-1, 75-1 on a Mauga touchdown. More than that, 100
how
to
many
1.
snaps has been getting a game? Has he been getting a lot of snaps, or he's just like kind of situational?
I want to say 5 to 10, but I don't have the numbers handy in front of me. But
It could happen. Spider 2,
He's
Y
good.
banana in the red zone. That's a play for the fullback.
He has a
All right,
total of eight snaps this year.
8 snaps.
So you need him to get 8 snaps this whole year.
Yes.
Well, it's only started. It's only the
You
last
need
2
him to get a
weeks.
touchdown in maybe 2 snaps in this game.
So 100-1 are not good. I need more than 100-1. I need like 200-1 odds. So
1,000-1.
someone in Vegas give me 1,000-1 odds, and I'll wager $5.
All right, Vic Mahauga. How do you say it, Dave?
Mauga.
Mauga.
I have no idea.
Anytime touchdown. That's his recommendation.
That's my hot bet. My hot tip of the night. My hot bet. If you see that action, jump on it.
All right, Neil. If it happens, you get this clip ready and you post it everywhere. Okay. All right. We all have the Raiders losing this game and continuing the tank, so they'll probably win. So
It's
yeah,
possible.
it's possible. I mean, this Falcons team is not great, but yeah, the Raiders have not playing good. Unclear quarterback situation too. So we'll see. It is a Raiders home game. I wonder if the Falcon fans will travel for this game.
I saw somewhere on social media that their numbers are good. Like they're like at least half the fans are supposed to be Falcon fans based on some of the early ticket market things I've seen. So I think they are going to show up. I guess you're a Falcons fan. You planned this for a while back, and at Christmas time in Vegas, whatever. But I think there will be a good turnout for Falcons fans.
Unfortunately, I didn't know I have fans like that.
Yeah, I guess every team does. I guess if you pick one trip a year you want to go to, you pick Vegas. So
Fair.
All right, let's get into questions. Are the Raiders spending Snowden by Sultan Stanley?
No, I mean, if they were going to, he wouldn't be practicing. So, AP said that they handled it internally. Didn't elaborate on exactly what that means. We'll see. If he doesn't play on Monday or is benched or something of that nature. But he's going to be on the team moving forward, barring something unforeseen. The team, they have all the details on a legal standpoint. And at this point, it's up to the NFL, which they're going to be waiting on the court case to resolve, which again probably won't happen until after the season. So if he does receive some sort of punishment, most likely is going to be for 2025. So not this season.
Last question. Thoughts on a Derek Carr reunion next year on the low if they are not sold on Cam or Shadir by Bubba J2?
I don't think it's happening. But I was thinking today about how about Derek Carr rejoining Devontae Adams in New York? That's something I just thought about today. That could happen. They don't want Aaron Rodgers back, and they're kind of stuck with Devontae, I think. So Derek
Weren't
Carr
they
should be.
flirting around with Derek Carr?
They were. He came in and actually interviewed. He actually went there to the facility, and he was their second choice behind Rodgers. And clearly, maybe it should have been their first choice. But so that's my. I think Derek maybe to. I can't imagine he comes back here. I just think there's enough. There's too much history, too much baggage, too much. Let's get somebody else. We've been through that. We've seen that act. Let's get somebody different and hope for more of an upside.
Yeah, I think on both ends, I think there'd be a lack of interest there. So if they are going to pursue veterans, there are some guys that are set to hit the market. Sam Darnold, although I can't expect that the Vikings will let him walk after the way he's been playing this season, whether they franchise tag him or give him a long-term deal or whatever it is. Aaron Rodgers, but for similar reasons as Derek Carr, like I don't see the Rodgers thing happening with the Raiders necessarily.
Bring back Devontae and Rodgers
Oh
in
yeah,
Vegas.
yeah, running back a little 3 years too late. But Russell Wilson, again, same thing with the Steelers. I don't know why they would let him walk at this point. I guess they can go get Justin Fields, as all fans apparently thought that Justin Fields would solve all their issues, as we heard the entire offseason pretty much. So Justin Fields is probably the most realistic free agent option, which goes to show how, unexciting the free agent options are probably going to be this year. So all that to say, they need to draft quarterback this year.
I agree. Draft a quarterback. Don't overpay for a veteran that it's going to be middling. All right. Well, that's it for today. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. Make sure you rate on Spotify or Apple. Really appreciate you guys listening. It's been a tough season, but we will join you guys live after the Falcons game when they probably will win as a reverse curse, like spit on our faces. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys on Monday night.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Later.
Hasta la vista.